Hey everyone, so today we are going to be debunking a myth. And the myth is that knowledge is power, and this is something I thought was true. And it is true to a certain extent, but it's nuanced. So knowledge in itself is more potential power, not just power, in that it can bring you a lot of stuff, but if you don't know how to use it properly and use it to accumulate wealth or your success in life, having knowledge in itself will not do much. And there's so many examples of this. And it's something I thought, I was under this misconception for a long time until I read the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, which is one of the first books I stumbled across when about over a year ago I started to get into this finance and self-help and self-development book industry through YouTube. And it was probably one of the first books. It was one of the first books I should have read, but I didn't really get time. Well, I don't know about time, but I just didn't get to until now. And I'm still going through it now, and it's one of the most well-known best-selling books on accumulating wealth, written many, many years ago. And even to this day, I still get recommendations from all these people about this book, even if they're not like wealthy or they're young. It's just so amazing how this book keeps getting mentioned. It's just like a great book, and it's basically a book about a man who surveyed hundreds of millionaires, starting with the richest man in the world at the time, Andrew Carnegie of the steel industry, who put this task on him and said, are you willing to do this unpaid? And he said, yes, I'll do it. And so he spent the next 20 years, just as Andrew Carnegie asked him to profile all these millionaires. And it's a very interesting book. Like one of the first people he goes to, the first person he goes to, is a man named Henry Ford, which I'm sure you guys have heard of. He started the Ford motor industry, and he's built it to such a great, I mean, I don't know about great nowadays, but industry and business that survived all the competition out there. Apparently there's thousands of automobile competitors, thousands upon thousands, back in the day of Ford. And he survived all that competition. All of them have gone bankrupt or out of business, and he's still around. And if you guys have any knowledge of the car industry, you know how competitive it is even to this day, with new entrants almost every other year. And it's just very competitive with all this new technology. And Ford is still around, which is so astounding. And it's so interesting because like he recounts a story of like searching for Ford to interview, and then he finally finds him like in this like shack covered in oil with like overalls on, and then he shakes his hand and gets Napoleon Hill's like sleeve all covered in like oil. Napoleon Hill is the author of Think and Grow Rich, by the way. And then it's just very funny because like after interviews, he's like, how is this man ever going to achieve anything in life? Look at him. He's not going to be rich. And now look at him today. So it's very interesting, and I think it's one of those concepts that takes another video to elaborate on. But essentially, I think it dispels a lot of myths about the people who became exceptionally wealthy. They oftentimes are not dressed wealthy, and they do what they do because they love it so much. And even when they're already rich and they could just spend the rest of their lives on vacation, buying islands and on cruise ships, they spend their time doing what they've been doing before. And I think the biggest misconception, which implies a lot of stuff, is that all rich people wear a lot of rich, extravagant clothing with caviars and monocles and top hats and all that stuff. It's like, it's not true. It's not true at all. Sam Walton, probably one of the richest people to ever exist, who has accumulated probably the most wealth in history, more than even Bill Gates. He wrote a book called Made in America. It's the same thing. It's just like everything in the book is just like, it just shows how much of a down-to-earth man he was, and how like he was never for that fancy stuff. He did all sorts of stuff that normal people do, and he wore normal people clothing. He was very down to earth, dirt all over his clothes, stuff like that. So back on topic, the myth I want to dispel in this video is the whole idea about knowledge is power. Accumulating knowledge is very, very important, and that's the first thing that most people don't do. They think once school's over, once they finish their education, they don't have to learn. And that really sets apart the people who really go on, who spend their time just constantly learning from the people who just stop learning when they finish college or graduate school or whatever. And knowledge is very important in itself, but it's not, as the book explains, Think and Grow Rich, it's like they give the example of teachers and educators who have accumulated general or specialized knowledge, but they're not rich. Because as the book explains, they don't know how to use this knowledge effectively and apply it to accumulate wealth or success in life. And that's a very important thing in itself. There's that common example of the person who is a exceptionally highly talented singer but only sings in the shower. Again, you can apply that example to anything. The chess player who is at a grandmaster level but never plays with anyone outside of his family and just plays for fun and doesn't realize it. That never really happens, but I guess you get the point. So accumulating skill and knowledge and talent is something, first off, a lot of people, they don't do. So most people don't even get to the level of grandmaster skill. So that's the first thing you have to get to. But once you've accumulated knowledge, you can't just, assume, okay, I've accumulated all this knowledge, that's it, I'm good to go. Applying it and knowing how to utilize it properly is very, very important in and of itself. And I just want to conclude with some more illustrations of the topic in Think and Grow Rich, the book. So he goes on to give two great examples, Thomas Edison and Henry Ford. And he tells you how both of these individuals had very, very little academic schooling. Thomas Edison apparently only had 3 months of actual education, and yet he accomplished so much. And he was apparently one of the smartest people to ever exist. And the thing is, he helped invent the light bulb, and he applied a lot of these principles that I want to talk about on my YouTube channel, like the fact that he tested and failed numerous times. You know that saying that's very famous. He said something like, I failed 100,000 times in creating the light bulb. That just gives me 100,000 things that don't work, which will get me 100,000 times closer to finding things that will work to create the light bulb. You see, his mindset and his proper rationality allowed him to not give up so quickly and to test out things and use those failures as learning lessons to create the success that he wanted, and finally inventing a light bulb that worked. And it took that many amount of failures. And again, that's a video for another day. But the point is that these two individuals had very little academic schooling. But the book and Napoleon Hill illustrates that there's a difference between academic schooling and having the right mindset and work ethic to accumulate and constantly keep learning and developing skills and mindsets and the ability to learn and accumulate that wealth and exercising it on a daily basis, whether or not you're in school or you're out of school. And I think the people will understand this over time, because oftentimes if you get the great fortune of living 40, 50 years after you graduate from school, every single day that you exercise this, you will be that much ahead of a lot of people, because the majority of people out there, after they finish school, they just like, okay, I don't have to be forced to learn anymore, I'm just going to turn off my brain. And you literally see this, like if you just look around you, look at the people in cities and at work, they're just like almost like monkeys. They're grinding away at something and they're not trying to learn and grow and develop themselves or their skill on a daily basis. They're just like, okay, I finished my schooling, and then it's just like every single day you start building just like a snowball an advantage on these people, and now grow and grow and surmount into this massive monsoon avalanche of snow that just pretty much destroys your competition. And so I think it's all very interesting. And as far as competition, I think that's something for another video as well. I recently just saw this interview with George Lucas, and he's a billionaire. He created Star Wars, and he was in a culture, and I think it's very interesting because certain cultures you have to compete, others you don't. And he was in a culture where he promoted his competition. It wasn't like a I must defeat you so I can win sort of attitude, which is very interesting. Anyhow, thank you so much for watching this video, and I guess if you learn nothing else, realize that knowledge is very important, so accumulate it, but also realize that exercising and applying it is also very important, and being able to learn and accumulate more is also very important. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.